One thing in this context, let me tell you all that private companies under the new act, you should start believing they are public companies. If you are going to comply with them as private companies, chances of default will be high. You believe they are public companies, you will not go wrong. Because most of the exemptions, directly or indirectly, have been withdrawn. Without saying in so many words. You have to go through each provision, then you will say, oh, this is also applicable, because nowhere it is mentioned. It just says company. Company automatically includes every company. Whereas earlier, 295, such a simple thing, shall not apply to a private company unless it is a subsidiary of a public company. Now nothing of that sort. Instead, it will tell you, you cannot give loan, and then to a person. Who is that person? Explanation says all this. Wherever relative, director relative or member, private company, etc., etc. Only category which has not been covered in that is loans by a holding company to a subsidiary company. When you see in the explanation, otherwise all other criteria you cannot give. Here they have not said positively you can give, but they have not denied that. And 185 they bring in place of 295. 372A remains on the statute. 186 is yet to be notified. And then department is approached for, or ministry is approached for clarification. What was the first clarification? 186 is not in force, everybody knows. They say yes, you can use 372. 372 is very much there, but that is already private company exempted from 372A. 185 doesn't exempt you, 372 exempts you. Where do you go? This, without any thought having been given, this was just enforced that other provisions have to go together. But here the real problem is coming to the private companies and directors who are treating it as personal funds and withdrawing and depositing anytime. Now they are having real problems, and in future also this particular provision has a potential of mischief making by the department, because they would be fairly confident that a lot of private limited companies would have violated this provision, and later on their job will be that only to try and find how many companies have really done this.
Presently, many companies have given a guarantee to their associate concerned as far as bank loans are concerned.
Right.
So, the bank is taking a position that whoever has given the existing guarantee given, it still will continue.
Right.
And it is only applicable to the new loans given or new existing guarantees given.
Right.
So, what is the real actual position?
Yeah, the point raised is whether all those guarantees given or security provided before this provision came into force, what happens to those? The general provision of law is always that law is prospective unless specifically it mentions it is retrospective. And secondly, whatever has been done in the past was done as per the law as then prevailing. So therefore that will be valid, that will continue, unless you are going to change the terms and conditions of the original, or you are going to provide additional security or increase the limit of the security, then perhaps it amounts to a change, there can be a technical issue. But otherwise, if the same arrangement continues, there is no reason why you should have any problem, and that would not amount to any violation unless the law specifically provides that all existing arrangements also have to cease within a particular time frame as such.
Sir, usually there is a CC facility which is renewed
Yeah,
every year.
that is where the issue will come. If it is a long-term loan, that continues. But in case of cash credit, very next year it comes. Now there, if it is falling within, it is a debatable thing. In my personal view, so far as holding company to subsidiary company is concerned, that because there is no specific bar on that, it is permitted, and that has been in the second clarification. The government has also clarified that holding company to subsidiary company, wholly owned subsidiary company, loans can be given or security can be provided.
Can
Now-
there be same question to the updates also?
Sorry? Sorry?
Then the updates in the subsidiary books.
Yeah.
Towards the holding company.
Those also will be treated in a similar fashion.
It will be covered in the 185 or exempted under the law?
No, 185.
It will be covered in the 185.
Yes. Now section,
Loan to subsidiary can't be given, no. Only exemption is given to wholly on subsidiary. Loan or guarantee to wholly on subsidiary.
right,
By
right.
virtue of section 372 and 185. But
See, the truth is that 372A doesn't apply to private companies. As on date also. And and earlier 295 also didn't apply. Now the government intention seems to be to regulate the flow of funds between the private limited company, and this, let me share with you, it has arisen from a narration the committee. This issue had come up of private limited or other misuse of private limited companies, and that was in the context of Ketan Parekh case. He had about 450 private companies, and there they found in one company overnight, one evening there were 2000 crore balance, and next morning money started vanishing. They couldn't trace the trail, and that's why there's even layering, that not more than 2 layers. That is a direct fallout of that so many private companies are created that the companies promoters are statutory these companies. Further companies who is the actual promoter, they are finding difficult to trace also, and therefore they thought, and that's why simultaneously LLP was advocated that private companies should be controlled more, regulated more, and this is one of the fallout of that only, that private companies are being, for practical purposes, treated in most regard like a public company, and that is where this provision of related party transactions, or section 188, which is yet to be notified, which is corresponding to section 297 under the Companies Act 1956, contract for purchase, sale of goods, materials and supply of services. Today where we know the requirement is if it is more than 1 crore paid up capital and contract with those designated persons, whether it's a private company or director or partner, etc., then you require central government approval. Now section 188 will do away with central government approval. It will be left to the shareholders. Only requirement will be special resolution will have to be passed by the shareholders. Now, interestingly, what the provision has been twisted or tweaked, that this resolution which will be passed, there the interested directors or interested promoters, they will not participate in the voting. So in other words, it has to be by non-promoter shareholders. Now, I was just going through the provision. What happens to a company where all the shareholders are related parties only, and there is no role for the government there, and it can be passed only by special resolution by non-interested shareholders? Then by implication it would mean company cannot enter into such a contract, because company cannot comply with the provision. Only saving grace is that majority of the private companies may not fall in that, because as per the rules, minimum paid up capital of 1 crore is mentioned, and further requirement is that any such contract should constitute in terms of value 20% of more of the net worth of the company or of the turnover of the company for that financial year. So if 100 crores is the turnover, so contracts below 20 crores will not fall in that trap. More than 20 crores in that given example will fall in that trap. So without rules, if you read, then it will give you impression that if all related directors or family members are shareholders, you cannot pass such a resolution. But the smaller companies have been exempted. But more importantly, what is actually covered is not that every contract automatically beyond that 20% is covered. No. It is only where there is no arm's length transaction. If it is done in normal course of business and it is an arm's length transaction, then there is no issue. Then there is no issue at all as such. It is only when the transaction is not at arm's length, then these provisions will come into play. But as I said, the good thing is that it is shareholders themselves that have to take the call, and you don't have to go to government to get an approval for this. So on one hand, it has been liberalized, but on the other hand, this restriction is there to ensure that the provision is not abused. Now this is another important change which in practice it is very much there. JVs, you will find articles, joint ventures, groups, they have provisions protecting each other's respective interests. But now even the minority shareholder who puts 10%, 15%, 20% holding, statute is not recognizing officially. Till now, entrenchment positions are not officially recognized, and courts also keep on playing havoc that you cannot have this kind of agreement. If you have this kind of agreement, it is not valid. It is not enforceable. When it is said it is between two parties, a private agreement not to sell or transfer the shares without first right or refusal to the other party, where is the role for court to come in between? But our own Bombay High Court Justice Chandrachud held, no, you cannot do that. Of course, that was in the context of relating to a public limited company under the ground that shares are freely transferable. But he said, it is my right. I am willing to sacrifice that I am saying it is not freely transferable, so far as I am concerned, I will keep it. Court says, no, that is also not valid. But now by bringing it on statute, there is a statutory protection so that today investors also can get protection and they can have their terms incorporated in the articles which otherwise also are being done, but now with a statutory backing to that. So friends, those were some of the important provisions. Let me take you quickly through NCLT, because there are still quite a few slides I have to cover, and as I can see the time keeps on running. Now here a very important, let me quickly take you through. Now this was the Article 323A and 323B of the Constitution, which give authority to create tribunals. That time the Law Commission said diversification of judicial administration is one amongst many methods of achieving the result of reducing workload in the high courts. As our friend earlier pointed out, that all along this has been the intent, but to what extent it has achieved the result is debatable. Now to create NCLT simultaneously there has to be a dissolution of Company Law Board. And now see the irony. Company's Second Amendment Act 2002, there is a section there, section 10FA, dissolving the Company Law Board. Law is there on statute, but it has not been notified. Those sections have not been notified, and therefore Company Law Board, which was supposed to be dissolved in 2002, even in 2014 after 12 years, it continues. Now why it happened? There was a writ filed in the Madras High Court against this on the ground that there is a mockery of specialist tribunal by entrusting to a person who is wholly ignorant of company law the power to decide complicated questions of law, and also question of fact after assessing the evidence without knowing legal principles to be applied for assessing the evidence. The Bar Association of Madras High Court challenged this particular act because there were some very serious lacunas. Government had provided that anybody who was served in the government for 10 years or something, and at any stage he can join the bench, and if he wishes then again he can go back. If he doesn't enjoy being a member, he can go back and continue as joint secretary or whatever position he was there. Like that there were any shortcomings, and which Madras Bar took it very strongly, and Supreme Court was coming down heavily on that. Then, and the chairman as well as the other members were also more or less going to be bureaucrats. So it was seen actually this was one body being created again, so that all those after retirement or on the verge of retirement, like so many other commissions are there and tribunals are there where they can enter, here they were trying to enter. Then the Supreme Court, central government promised Supreme Court that whatever suggestions are given, those will be followed, and we'll implement and come back with a new revised law. And that is why this never went through and it remained there. But what happened? Again, in 2012, again Madras Bar filed a writ, kept it in abeyance. As soon as this new act came in, they moved the court and drew its attention that they have still not carried out all that they had promised. And therefore today, the Attorney General has given promise to the court that they will implement remaining things, and therefore in the meantime, NCLT will not be constituted. And the next hearing is scheduled on 7th of July, where this matter will be taken up, because Supreme Court wants to plug the loopholes which are being provided for the bureaucrats to step in very easily, instead of legal professionals who should be there, or the accounting professionals who should be there. So for quite some time, National Company Law Tribunal is not going to be created, and therefore for quite some time, Company Law Board will continue to exist. Now, let us understand what will be the consequences of the dissolution of the board, which we'll have to do one day when NCLT is to be created. There are huge pendency of cases today also. Those will continue with the tribunal. Chairman and other officials, as per the current scheme, will revert back to the MCA. They may not automatically become officers of the tribunal. And what will be the composition of the tribunal? Tribunal will have a president and judicial and technical members, similar to other tribunals which are there in the country. Chairperson, of course, can be a current or former judge of the Supreme Court or Chief Justice of the High Court. Earlier, this was not so. Government had provided the secretary also could join as chairman. And that is where this objection was raised, that IAS officer, he'll come and sit as the chairman of the tribunal and decide on technical issues about which he doesn't understand anything, would be there. And therefore then they carried out change and ensured that there are the judicial people, legal people and technical people from the field who are there. Term of office also in the earlier one, it was 3 years, subject to reappointment. Supreme Court blasted the government that which worthwhile professional will come and join you as a member for 3 years with a total uncertainty. Now they went 5 and 5. Again there is objection on the age. They say you are providing minimum 50 years, so you want your own bureaucrat should take a call and join here after 50 years. Why can't it be similar to what other judges at the age of 35, 40, 45, depending on the requirement of 15 years or whatever that is there, they can join. So these issues are there before the government, which government is considering, and before the next hearing, they have promised the Supreme Court that they will address these issues. Because Supreme Court has said that means you don't want competent professionals to come. All those who are on the closer to retirement only should become members here. And therefore the doubt is that this is tweaked in favor of the bureaucrats. So that they start planning last 5 years, they start planning 10 years, then that could be there. And that interesting provision we'll find little later. Appellate tribunal also will have similar provisions, a president, judicial and technical members. Only difference is age criteria, of course, is little more, so that the chairperson will retire at 70 and members at 67. 5 plus 5 year also. This is a provision which has been creating problems. Lien on office. Any Babu from the ministry can come and department come and join the tribunal. Earlier he was given 3 years to decide. That after 3 years also he can go back. Now that has been reduced to 1 year, but this is also being challenged. Then why should he be given that privilege? That it's like that your option, you join as a member and still you don't find it interesting, go back and resume as joint secretary or whatever level you were in the ministry. So is this body being created only for Babus to get one more avenue as such. So that is one of the contentions before the Supreme Court. Now today when we see the functions which tribunal will be handling, many of those functions are with the high courts, and every state has a high court, barring of course northeastern where they may have combined one. But how many benches will be there on the tribunal is a real issue, which we will come to know only by and by. And obviously there cannot be as many high courts there, that many benches are not going to be there. Benches will be lower. They may have bench taking care of Maharashtra and Gujarat, or Gujarat they may have taken care of Madhya Pradesh. Point is that currently what convenience litigants have comparatively, that to an extent will be lost because tribunal may not have that many benches which may be necessary, but we'll have to really see after they are notified. Now these are of course what I already said, the government has promised that they are taking care of these issues before the Supreme Court. Now this is very interesting. Tribunal to dispose of cases in expeditious manner within 3 months of commencement of proceedings. I am sure not a single person sitting